My name is Emily, and I've been married to Jake, 35M, for 7 years. We met at a charity event for a local animal shelter where we were both volunteers. I had always been passionate about animal welfare, having grown up with rescue dogs, and Jake seemed to share that passion. He was there with his company, which had sponsored the event. Jake appeared to be the perfect guy, kind, successful, and devoted to helping others. I remember that day vividly. I was helping set up the silent auction when I accidentally knocked over a vase of flowers. Jake rushed over to help me clean up the mess, and we ended up talking for hours. He told me he was a widower, having lost his wife Sarah to breast cancer 3 years before we met. Jake spoke about Sarah with such tenderness and respect, it made my heart ache for him. I admired his strength in continuing to live life and help others despite his loss. Our connection was instant, and we started dating soon after. Jake was attentive and caring, always surprising me with thoughtful gestures. He'd leave little notes in my lunch bag or send flowers to my workplace just because. I fell for him hard, and we got married after dating for 2 years. Our wedding was a beautiful, intimate affair. Jake's family welcomed me with open arms, especially his sister Megan, 38F, who became like a sister to me too. Jake's mother, Karen, 65F, told me how happy she was that Jake had found love again after losing Sarah. The way Jake's family embraced me made me feel like I truly belonged. After the wedding, our life together was great. Jake runs a successful tech company that develops educational software for children with learning disabilities. His passion for his work was inspiring, and I loved hearing about the impact his software was making in kids' lives. I work as a pediatric nurse, so we both shared a love for helping children in our own ways. We bought a beautiful house in the suburbs, complete with a big backyard for the rescued dogs we planned to adopt. We even set up a room that could easily be converted into a nursery, as we were thinking about starting a family of our own. Everything seemed perfect, and I often found myself marveling at how lucky I was to have found such an amazing partner. Jake and I had our routines that made our life together feel so comfortable and right. Every Sunday morning, we'd go for a long walk in the nearby park, stopping at our favorite coffee shop for breakfast. We'd spend evenings cooking dinner together, trying out new recipes and laughing at our culinary mishaps. On weekends, we'd often volunteer at the local animal shelter where we first met, feeling like we were giving back to the place that brought us together. But last Christmas, my world turned upside down in a way I never could have anticipated. It all started when Jake's sister Megan came to visit us for the holidays. Megan lives across the country in California, where she works as a marine biologist, so we don't see her often. She arrived a week before Christmas, bringing with her a suitcase full of gifts and a contagious holiday spirit. One evening, while Jake was out picking up some last-minute gifts, Megan and I were in the living room, sipping hot cocoa and catching up. She had brought some old family photo albums, saying she wanted to show me some embarrassing pictures of Jake as a kid. We were laughing at a photo of a gap-toothed 8-year-old Jake covered in mud when I noticed something odd. In one of the photos, Jake was standing next to a woman I didn't recognize. They were at what looked like a company picnic, Jake's arm around the woman's waist. The photo was dated just 5 years ago, which didn't make sense because Jake had told me his wife Sarah died 8 years ago. When I asked Megan about it, she looked confused and said, "Oh, that's Lisa, Jake's ex-wife." I felt like the ground had dropped out from under me. Ex-wife? Jake had never mentioned being married before Sarah. I tried to stay calm and asked Megan to tell me more about Lisa. She seemed uncomfortable, realizing she had said something she shouldn't have, but explained that Jake and Lisa had been married for 3 years before divorcing. According to Megan, the split was messy, with Lisa accusing Jake of financial abuse and infidelity. I was in shock. Not only had Jake lied about his past, but he had also created an entirely fictional dead wife. The Sarah I had heard so much about, the woman whose memory I had respected and honored, never existed. I felt like I was living in some kind of twisted alternate reality. I didn't confront Jake that night, deciding to wait until after the holidays when Megan had gone home. I didn't want to cause a scene or ruin everyone's Christmas. So I spent the next few days pretending everything was normal while my mind raced with questions and doubts. I found myself analyzing every conversation Jake and I had ever had about his past. How many of those stories were lies? Had he ever told me the truth about anything? I thought about all the times I had comforted him when he seemed sad about Sarah, all the anniversaries we had quietly acknowledged. It made me feel sick to think it had all been a fabrication. After New Year's, when life had settled back into its normal rhythm, I finally confronted Jake. I waited until we were both home from work, sitting him down in our living room, the same room where I had learned the truth from Megan. I showed him the photo and asked him to explain. At first, he tried to brush it off, saying it was an old girlfriend. But when I told him I knew about Lisa, he broke down. Jake admitted that he had lied about his past because he was ashamed of his failed marriage and afraid I wouldn't want to be with him if I knew the truth. He said he had created the story of Sarah because he thought it would be easier than explaining his real history. He explained that his marriage to Lisa had ended badly. They had met in college and married young, just after graduation. At first, things were good, but as they both started their careers, tensions arose. Jake was working long hours to get his tech startup off the ground, while Lisa felt neglected and resentful. According to Jake, Lisa began accusing him of having affairs with his female colleagues. He swore to me that these accusations were false, but Lisa's jealousy and insecurity grew. She started checking his phone, emails, and even followed him to work a few times. Jake said the breaking point came when Lisa emptied their joint bank account and maxed out their credit cards, claiming she was protecting herself in case Jake left her. This action nearly bankrupted Jake's fledgling company. When he confronted her, she threatened to tell everyone he had been abusive, even though Jake insisted this was a lie. The divorce that followed was nasty. Lisa spread rumors about Jake to their friends and family, painting him as a cheater and an abuser. Many people believed her, and Jake found himself ostracized from his social circle. His business suffered as word of the scandal spread in their small tech community. Jake admitted that the experience left him traumatized and distrustful. When he met me years later, he was terrified of history repeating itself. He created the story of being a widower, thinking it would be easier than explaining his messy past. As I listened to Jake's story, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. On one hand, I could understand why he might have been scared to reveal this painful history. On the other hand, I was devastated that he had lied to me for so long. How could he maintain such a massive deception throughout our entire relationship? I asked Jake why he never came clean, even after we were married and had built a life together. He broke down, saying he was always afraid I would leave him if I knew the truth. He realized now that his fear had created the very situation he was trying to avoid. I was overwhelmed by the magnitude of Jake's lies. The man I thought I knew, the man I had built a life with, had been deceiving me from the very beginning. I couldn't understand how he could maintain such a massive lie for so long. What else had he lied about? That night, I packed a bag and left our house. I couldn't bear to be around Jake, to sleep in the same bed with someone who had betrayed my trust so completely. I went to stay with my best friend, Rachel, 33F, who had always been there for me through thick and thin. As I lay awake in Rachel's guest room that night, I couldn't stop the flood of memories that washed over me. I thought about our first date, when Jake had told me about losing Sarah and how it had changed his perspective on life. I remembered comforting him on what he said was Sarah's birthday, holding him as he cried. All of it had been a lie. The next few weeks were a blur. I took some time off work, unable to focus on my patients when my own life was in such turmoil. Jake called and texted constantly, begging me to come back, promising to tell me the whole truth and work on our relationship. But I didn't know if I could ever trust him again. Rachel was my rock during this time. She listened patiently as I cycled through anger, sadness, and confusion. She never judged, never pushed me to make a decision one way or the other. She just provided a safe space for me to process my emotions. It's been a month now, and I'm still trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wants to believe Jake's explanation and give our marriage another chance. We had built a life together, and despite everything, I still love him. But another part of me can't get past the years of deception. How can I ever trust anything he says again? I'm torn between my love for Jake and my anger at his betrayal. I don't know if our marriage can survive this, but I'm not ready to give up just yet. I've asked Jake to give me some space while I decide what to do next. In the meantime, I'm trying to focus on my work and spending time with friends who support me. I never thought I'd be in this situation, questioning my entire relationship and the man I thought I knew so well. The future I had envisioned, the family we were planning to start, the life we were building together, now seems like a distant dream. I find myself wondering if any of it was real, or if it was all built on a foundation of lies. Any advice or similar experiences would be greatly appreciated. How do I move forward from here? Can a relationship recover from such a profound breach of trust? I feel lost and unsure, caught between the life I thought I had and the uncertain reality I now face. Update 1: It's been 2 months since my last post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. Your comments helped me gain perspective and gave me the strength to confront this situation head-on. After much soul-searching and several long talks with my closest friends, I decided to give Jake one last chance to explain himself fully. I agreed to meet him at a neutral location, a quiet cafe we used to frequent when we first started dating. It was a place filled with happy memories, which now felt bittersweet given the circumstances. When I arrived, Jake was already there, looking nervous and disheveled. It was clear he hadn't been sleeping well. His usual well-groomed appearance was replaced by stubble and dark circles under his eyes. As soon as I sat down, he launched into a long, detailed explanation of his past. Jake revealed that his marriage to Lisa had been more complicated than he initially let on. They had met during their sophomore year of college. Jake was studying computer science, and Lisa was majoring in business. They bonded over their shared ambition and drive to succeed. Their relationship progressed quickly, and they married just after graduation, despite concerns from their families that they were too young. At first, things were good. They were young, in love, and excited about building a life together. Jake started working on his tech startup idea, while Lisa got a job at a marketing firm. But as Jake's startup began to take off, the long hours and stress started to take a toll on their relationship. Jake was often at the office late into the night, working weekends, and constantly thinking about his business. Lisa, feeling neglected, started to resent Jake's dedication to his work. According to Jake, this is when Lisa's accusations of infidelity began. At first, it was just offhand comments about how much time he spent with his female co-founder. But as time went on, the accusations became more frequent and more serious. Lisa started checking his phone, reading his emails, and even followed him to work a few times. Jake swore to me that these accusations were false, that he had never been unfaithful to Lisa. But her jealousy and insecurity grew, creating a toxic environment in their home. He said he suggested couples therapy, but Lisa refused, insisting that he was the problem, not her. The breaking point came when Jake's company secured its first round of significant funding. He had been ecstatic, ready to celebrate this milestone with Lisa. But when he got home that night, he found that Lisa had emptied their joint bank account and maxed out their credit cards. She claimed she was protecting herself in case Jake left her for one of his co-workers. This action nearly bankrupted Jake's fledgling company. When he confronted her, Lisa became hysterical, threatening to tell everyone that he had been abusive. Jake insisted to me that this was a lie, that he had never laid a hand on Lisa or abused her in any way. The divorce that followed was nasty. Lisa followed through on her threats, spreading rumors about Jake to their friends and family. She painted him as a cheater and an abuser, and many people believed her. Jake found himself ostracized from his social circle. Even some of his oldest friends turned their backs on him. His business suffered as word of the scandal spread in their small tech community. Investors pulled out, and potential clients were wary of working with someone accused of such behavior. Jake said he almost lost everything he had worked for. As I listened to Jake's story, I felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, I could understand why he might have been scared to reveal this painful history. The trauma of going through such a public and messy divorce could certainly leave deep scars. On the other hand, I was still angry and hurt that he had lied to me for so long. I asked Jake why he never came clean, even after we were married and had built a life together. He broke down, saying he was always afraid I would leave him if I knew the truth. He realized now that his fear had created the very situation he was trying to avoid. Jake also revealed that the idea of creating a deceased wife came from a grief support group he had attended after his divorce. He had gone there hoping to find ways to cope with the loss of his marriage and reputation. Listening to the stories of widows and widowers, he found himself envying their ability to remember their lost loves with fondness, without the bitterness and anger he felt towards Lisa. That's when he came up with the idea of Sarah. He created a narrative of a loving marriage cut short by tragedy, a story that would elicit sympathy rather than suspicion or judgment. When he met me, he said he had initially planned to tell me the truth once we got serious, but as time went on, the lie became too big to take back. After our talk, I felt emotionally drained but also somewhat relieved to finally know the whole truth. I told Jake I needed more time to process everything and decide what this meant for our future. In the weeks that followed, I did a lot of thinking and some investigating of my own. I reached out to Megan, Jake's sister, to corroborate his story. She confirmed the broad strokes of what Jake had told me, adding that the divorce had been hard on their whole family. Megan said she had always felt guilty for not being more supportive of Jake during that time, as she had initially believed some of Lisa's accusations. I also made the difficult decision to contact Lisa. It took some time to track her down, but I finally managed to speak with her on the phone. Our conversation was tense, but revealing. While Lisa didn't retract her accusations against Jake, she did admit that she had been struggling with mental health issues during their marriage and may have overreacted to some situations. She said she had since gotten help and regretted how things had ended with Jake. This conversation left me with mixed feelings. On one hand, it seemed to support Jake's version of events. On the other hand, it made me wonder if there was more to the story that Jake wasn't telling me. I also spoke with some of my own friends and family about the situation. My parents, who had always adored Jake, were shocked by the revelation. They advised caution but also reminded me of how happy Jake had made me over the years. My friend Rachel, ever the pragmatist, suggested that while Jake's lie was enormous, his behavior throughout our marriage had been consistently loving and trustworthy. After gathering all this information, I'm still conflicted. Jake's actions are somewhat more understandable in light of his past trauma, but the fact remains that he lied to me for years. I'm struggling to reconcile the man I fell in love with and the man who could maintain such a significant deception. For now, Jake and I have agreed to try marriage counseling. We've had 2 sessions so far with Dr. Anderson, a therapist specializing in couples dealing with trust issues. The sessions have been emotionally challenging, but I feel like we're finally communicating honestly. In our last session, Dr. Anderson asked us to discuss our fears, both past and present. Jake opened up about his fear of abandonment and how the experience with Lisa had left him terrified of being hurt again. I shared my fear of being deceived, of not being able to trust my own judgment. I'm not sure if our marriage will survive this, but I want to give it one last try before making any final decisions. Jake has moved out of our house temporarily, giving me the space I asked for. We're taking things day by day, trying to rebuild the trust that was shattered by Jake's lies. I'll keep you updated on how things progress. Thank you again for all your support during this difficult time. It's been a comfort to know that I'm not alone in dealing with such a complex and painful situation. Update 2. It's been another 3 months since my last update, and I wanted to share the latest developments in my situation with Jake. We've been attending marriage counseling regularly with Dr. Anderson, and it's been an emotional roller coaster. Our sessions have been intense, often leaving both Jake and me emotionally drained. But they've also been enlightening, helping us unpack years of hidden emotions and unspoken fears. During one particularly intense session, Jake revealed that his fear of abandonment stemmed from his childhood. His father had left the family when Jake was just 10 years old, disappearing without explanation. Jake shared how he'd spent years hoping his father would return, checking the mail every day for a letter or a postcard. But his father never reached out, leaving a wound that never fully healed. This revelation helped me understand Jake's actions better. The combination of his childhood abandonment and the trauma from his divorce with Lisa had created a perfect storm of insecurity and distrust. While this insight didn't excuse his lies, it did help me empathize with his fears. Dr. Anderson has been working with us on rebuilding trust, but it's a slow process. We've been doing exercises where Jake has to be completely honest about his day, sharing even small details he might normally keep to himself. I've been working on expressing my doubts and fears openly, rather than letting them fester. Some days, I feel like we're making progress. Jake has been more open and vulnerable than I've ever seen him. He's shared stories from his past that he'd previously kept hidden, like the time he almost lost his company after the divorce, or the depression he fell into when his friends turned their backs on him. Other days, I find myself questioning everything Jake says or does. A late night at work makes me wonder if he's really at the office. A text message from an unknown number sends my mind spiraling with suspicion. It's exhausting, and sometimes I wonder if I'll ever be able to trust fully again. About a month ago, we had a breakthrough of sorts. Jake suggested we take a trip to his hometown to visit his mother, Karen. He wanted me to hear about his past from someone who had been there through it all. I was hesitant at first, but eventually agreed. The visit was eye-opening. Karen welcomed me warmly, and it was clear she had no idea about the turmoil in our marriage. She spent hours sharing stories about Jake's childhood and his relationship with Lisa. She showed me old photos and even some of Jake's childhood journals. It was strange but touching to see this side of my husband that I'd never known before. Karen confirmed much of what Jake had told me about his divorce from Lisa. She described how devastated Jake had been, how he'd struggled to rebuild his life and business afterward. She also shared her own guilt about not seeing the signs of trouble in Jake's first marriage, and how she'd vowed to be more supportive of him in the future. Hearing these stories from Karen helped me see Jake in a new light. I could see the scared, hurt man behind the lies, the one who had been so afraid of losing love again that he'd created an elaborate fiction to protect himself. However, the trip also brought up new questions. While we were there, we ran into one of Jake's old friends from high school, Tom, 36M. Tom mentioned something about Jake's wild college days, which Jake quickly brushed off. When I asked about it later, Jake became evasive, saying it was nothing important. This incident has left me wondering if there are still things Jake isn't telling me. While I understand he can't be expected to share every detail of his past, given recent events, any hint of secrecy makes me uneasy. We're continuing with our counseling, and I'm trying to keep an open mind. Jake has been making efforts to be more transparent, sharing his work schedule with me and being more open about his feelings. He's even started a journal, at Dr. Anderson's suggestion, to work through his emotions and fears. But rebuilding trust is hard, and there are still moments when I find myself doubting him. Sometimes, I catch myself checking his phone when he's in the shower or feeling a pang of suspicion when he mentions a new colleague at work. I hate feeling this way, but I don't know how to stop. For now, I'm taking things one day at a time. We're still living separately, but we've started having dinner together a few times a week. It's a small step, but it feels like progress. We're relearning how to be around each other, how to communicate honestly and openly. I'm grateful for the support I've received from this community. Your advice and shared experiences have been a lifeline during this difficult time. I'll update again when there are significant developments in our situation. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share the conclusion to my story with Jake. After months of counseling and hard work on both our parts, I've made the difficult decision to end our marriage. This wasn't an easy choice, and it's taken me a long time to come to terms with it. The final straw came about 2 months ago. Jake and I were making slow but steady progress in rebuilding our relationship. We had even started discussing the possibility of me moving back into our house. Then, out of the blue, I received an email from a woman named Carrie, 30F. Carrie claimed she had a brief relationship with Jake 3 years ago, well into our marriage. She said she had just found out Jake was married and felt I deserved to know the truth. She provided dates and details that seemed to check out, including mentions of business trips Jake had taken that I remembered. When I confronted Jake, he initially denied everything. But as I pressed him with the information Carrie had shared, he finally broke down and admitted it was true. He swore it was a one-time mistake, that he'd been drunk and feeling insecure about our relationship at the time. This new betrayal was too much for me to bear. All the progress we'd made, all the trust we'd been trying to rebuild, came crashing down in an instant. I realized that no matter how much I wanted to believe in Jake, I could never fully trust him again. I spent the next week in a daze, alternating between anger and profound sadness. I reached out to Dr. Anderson for an emergency session, trying to process this new information. She helped me see that while Jake's past traumas might explain his behavior, they didn't excuse it. After much soul-searching and long conversations with my closest friends and family, I made the decision to file for divorce. When I told Jake, he begged me to reconsider, promising to do anything to save our marriage. He offered to go to more intensive therapy, to take a lie detector test, anything to prove he could be trusted. But I knew in my heart that it was over. The man I thought I married never really existed. The Jake I fell in love with was a carefully crafted persona, designed to hide his true self. I realized I couldn't spend the rest of my life wondering what other secrets he might be keeping. The divorce process has been difficult, but I'm surrounded by a strong support system of friends and family. My parents have been incredibly supportive, reminding me that I deserve honesty and trust in my relationships. Rachel has been my rock, providing a shoulder to cry on and a voice of reason when I start to doubt my decision. I've also started seeing a therapist on my own to work through my feelings and learn how to trust again in the future. It's a slow process, but I'm starting to feel more like myself again. As for Jake, last I heard, he'd moved out of state to start fresh. Part of me hopes he gets the help he needs to deal with his issues. Despite everything, I don't wish him ill. But mostly, I'm focused on healing and moving forward with my own life. This experience has taught me a lot about the importance of honesty in relationships and trusting my instincts. While I'm sad that my marriage ended this way, I'm also hopeful for the future. I know now that I deserve a relationship built on trust and mutual respect. I've started to rediscover parts of myself that I had neglected during my marriage. I've taken up painting again, something I used to love but had put aside. I'm planning a solo trip to Europe, something I've always wanted to do. It's scary to think about starting over at 32, but it's also exciting. Thank you to everyone who's followed my story and offered support along the way. Your kindness and advice have been invaluable during this challenging time. Here's to new beginnings and brighter days ahead.